Welcome back to Sports Talk with Austin, your daily dose of sports and entertainment. And in today's show, we are previewing and breaking down the 2025 LA Rams season preview. And with me today to do that is Mr. Ty Hudson of Tusk Talk with Ty. Now, if you are familiar with this man, you know he loves his Arkansas Razorbacks. But as he will tell you he has multiple other sports that he loves as well in teams. Hence, I invited him on to do the LA Rams. No better choice to do this with. But Mr. Ty Hudson, how are you on this lovely Monday afternoon? And how are you, good sir?
Yeah, man, doing good. Enjoying this ridiculous Arkansas, this southern high humidity heat, just kind of hanging in there and taking it day by day through the summer as we always do.
I know, right? Out here in Kentucky, it's 95 degrees as we speak where I'm at. So air conditioning's cranking and everything else too. But at least it's not as bad as California weather, I guess.
Fair, yeah.
But speaking of California, we've got the LA Rams season preview coming down the pipe in 2025. And there's a lot of things, the more they stay the same, the more they change, as the old saying goes. And with the Rams, Matt Stafford coming back, thought about retirement. He's coming back. The Rams, got rid of not Puka Nakua, Cooper Cuff, excuse me, wrong guy. Apologies. And he went off to Seattle. And the Rams, obviously found something in the defense. And the Rams made a nice push last year, almost took the Super Bowl champions out in the divisional round. But going into this year, Ty, I want to know from your point of view, the Rams are a little older on the offensive side of the ball, obviously with Stafford, and they got some young pieces around him. But I want to know, do you think this offense under Stafford, do you think they could still deliver at a high level for the Rams going into this year?
Well, last year it was availability of the guys in the offensive line. It was guys that were banged up, and of course Cooper Kupp had his injuries, and Puka Nakua was restrained a little bit. But when they're fully healthy with Stafford at the helm, I mean, yeah, they've absolutely shown they could probably. I mean, I think had that been on a neutral field against the Eagles, I kind of wonder who would have came out victorious in that playoff matchup. I think the Rams are absolutely one of the top 5 teams in the league last year. Wasn't that way the entire year, but again, when they're healthy and with the some of the moves they've made, wonderful moves they've made on the defensive side of the ball, they've shown that even when their offense last year struggled, their defense could come through, keep them in games, and even help them fight back. Unfortunately, I didn't get to watch a lot of Ram football last year, but tried to watch as much as I could, and I still have faith that Stafford's going to be the guy. Of course, it's about durability when you're talking about someone that's as old as I am. I mean, I'll be 42 in July. I think Matthew Stafford's 39, something like that, 40, somewhere in there. He's definitely pushing it. So we'll have to wait and see. I still kind of wonder if 2026 is going to be the year. Maybe they do finally draft a quarterback that's worthy. I don't know their picks, what that looks like at the moment. But I kind of wonder if they're not ready to eventually get ready for the future. If McVay isn't going to retire, to see what that next quarterback, see who that's going to be, or does McVay leave when Stafford retires? That's something that's always on the back of the minds of Rams fans.
And one thing I want to say too is what with the Rams offense with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nakua, they seem to have a nice little connection between them. You kind of had your yin and your yang. You had one guy, they're both brilliant route runners, but you had one of your speed and catch, and you had your toughness and durability in Puka Nakua. But Cooper Kupp, obviously, he was a fantastic player. Won the Triple Crown in 21 the year. The Rams won the whole thing, as we all know. But he just kept getting injured, hamstrings, ankles. And it sucks that a player of that caliber able to stay healthy and keep it together because him and Stafford, I think, shared a pretty big connection with one another. He was kind of Stafford's go-to guy. How do you feel, Ty, with letting go of Cooper Kupp? Do you feel that it was something that needed to be done? Do you wish there could have been something else they could have done? How do you feel about that?
Well, I know they're still banking on, Nakua is going to be the guy. And it's really hard in the league anymore to have two guys of that caliber in Puka Nakua and Cooper Kupp. Like these are high salary guys. They're going to weigh down your depth chart because of their massive salaries and what they're probably going to demand when their buyouts and everything, when their extensions are coming to a close. I saw this coming. They'd shopped him around the year before, if memory serves. They've wanted Puka to be the guy now for the last couple of years, and I'm not shocked by it. We'll see what Tutu Atwell, Devontae Adams. They've got a few guys that they're kind of banking on being the check number 2, number 3 receivers in the offense. Don't get me wrong, I still want a Ram Cooper Kupp jersey as badly as I want a Puka Ram jersey. It sucks to see him go. The guy did a lot for the Rams, there's no doubt, but this is a business after all. I hated to see him go, but I understood the decision. I think it was probably the right one. I mean, he is 32. We talk about durability issues with Stafford and some of the older players. Well, Kupp is 32. I think as of June, he turned 32 years of age. So as we all know, that's getting up there in the league.
Mm-hmm. And what's interesting about this too is this is not the first player this has happened to. All Rams fans love and remember Todd Gurley. They all thought he was going to be a fantastic running back, but then he gets one knee injury and since. So I don't know if it's I know, like you said, durability is a big thing, and it goes across all sports, but especially in the NFL. And it's just funny thinking about it. Ty, is 2021 is not that long ago, and Cooper Kupp's coming off one of the greatest receiving seasons in history, and now he is just let go and picks him up on a cheap contract. Isn't that crazy how that in a blink of an eye can turn?
Oh yeah, I mean, especially today in the NFL, it's about what are you projected to do, right? And it's just that's the business world, right? What can we expect out of you in the future? And I don't think they were expecting a whole lot. I think Cooper Kupp's going to be fine. I kind of thought Todd Gurley. I was a little surprised when they let Todd Gurley go, but I knew with that knee injury, it was bound to happen. Again, it's just kind of how it goes. And what did Todd Gurley do when he left the Rams? Right? I think Kupp's going to be a different scenario. I think Kupp could absolutely have a little bit of success. Not a big fan of him remaining in the division, but I mean, it is what it is. But yeah, I mean, again, the craziest thing is you've got Devontae Adams there, and Devontae Adams isn't exactly young either.
And which the thing with that is Devontae Adams in a lot of people's eyes was the best receiver, and it's crazy that he's going to walk into the Rams on I would say a pretty team friendly deal, and you didn't give him nothing too crazy, but it's the fact of what boggles my mind when you look at these rosters. It's just like you've got this receiver in Devontae Adams who league wide is respected, and by many statistical marks, he's the best receiver we've seen in the past years. And it's just crazy that the Rams and McVay, as they like to say, stole another one like they did with OBJ the year they won the Super Bowl. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just the rich get richer, Ty. It's just like the Rams are just like they didn't have any of their draft picks or nothing, and it's just like they're still winning. And it's irritating people sometimes. It's like, how is this team doing this? Well, when you have a great coach at Sean McVay and that knows how to get the most out of people, you're going to find a way to win.
And to be fair, too, I mean, this isn't 2018 Devontae Adams, right? This is this is going to be 2025 Devontae Adams, who spent the last 3 years, or he was with the Raiders. I think he went to the Jets last year. I think he had something like 65 catches. I want to say 6 or 7 receiving touchdowns. What was a big part of that offense, but it's not a young cat, right? Again, you're not getting a 2018 or a 2000. What year was it at Green Bay where he broke 1,500 yards? I think he did it twice, actually. You're not. I don't know that you're getting that Devontae Adams.
I think he still has a little juice left in him. Don't get me wrong. I don't think he's gonna come to the Rams and be a hindrance. I don't think it's that at all. Because I still think Devontae has 3 or 4 good years left in him, in my opinion. Now, I may be too optimistic, and people may say that's too much. But I like to see the best in players. And watching my own eyes what this guy was able to do, like in double teams, like he did, Aaron Rodgers throw him his patented back shoulder fade, and he still catch it. I know that was a Devontae Adams yesteryear before he suffered the knee injury that kind of set him out in some games in Vegas. But Stafford has got good as deep ball as anybody in the league and can throw a back shoulder with the best of them. And I think Devontae loves that quarterback. So I think this is a good fit. I don't know about you. But
no, I love it. Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is a guy who's a part of the 100+ touchdown club and the 11,000 or so total receiving yards club. Like, yeah, I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, I don't know how many years he had double-digit scoring, when he was with Green Bay, and I think he did it at least once with the Raiders. I mean, it is a big deal. I guess the question would be, would you prefer a Cooper Kupp to a Devontae Adams, right? Like, that's the question. Devontae's, what is he, 6'1", 215. Don't think he's as fast as he once was. Don't think he cuts like he used to, but he is still shifty. He's still a problem, and he could still put up scores. I mean, hell, he had 8 scores last year with the Jets, and this is someone that's been in the league. This has been someone that's been in the league for over a decade. So he's still doing big things, and he's capable of doing it. And the other thing here is, you already brought it up. It's Sean McVay. It's being in that offense with McVay, with Stafford, who, by the way, has his own signature throw. He's got the no-look throw that I know that receivers love to see. That you talk about looking off linebackers and safeties. That no-look pass by Stafford can be absolutely devastating. So, yeah, I mean, this is a for sure move that Devontae knew what he was getting into, going to McVay and Stafford with already an established receiver in Puka Nacua. And not only that, they just drafted a tight end who I really like, who I think will be who could be a contributor year one, assuming Tyler Higbee, doesn't keep the spot. But that Terrence Ferguson kid out of Oregon, I thought that was a pretty shifty pick. So Rams are going to be I think they're going to be a problem next year for sure.
And what I want to add to the offense, and then talk about the defense, because I do think the defense is something worth mentioning. But the run game for the Rams, we saw it come later on in the season. In the beginning, it kind of struggled a little bit. In the Detroit game, we saw it on the opening Sunday night, which the Detroit Lions, we found out their defense with Aaron Glenn was masterful. They did a good job when they were healthy. So I don't think you take no shame in that. And that might have been too Stafford wanting to beat the Lions, show that, hey, you messed up by letting me go. Not only did I win a Super Bowl, but I'm going to beat you too. That could have been part of it too, having the whole want to have let's throw the ball. I want to show them I still got it, that kind of thing. But as far as like the run game goes, like the first game against the Lions, couple games down there, it was like, okay, this run game isn't what we need to be. But then that's where McVay comes in. As you mentioned, Ty, in this offense, he does a lot of motions in the oceans, as I like to call them, shifts, and he lines people up different, and it opens up the run game over time.
Yeah, they've. I was gonna say that I think they found something with Kyron Williams and Blake Corum. They found something there, and their ability to spread it out and open it up. on offense. I mean, the old saying, I say it with the Razorbacks all the time, and the same is true in high school, college, and pro. If you can, the best type of offense is one that can be balanced. It's not necessarily throwing heavy or running heavy, although it used to be about running the ball heavily, but in the NFL 20 or so years ago, it's not the case anymore. I think the more balanced you are, and McVay is pretty masterful at finding that. If it's not in a game, it's an over the week scenario where all of a sudden you look up and Kyron Williams is one of the top 5 backs in the NFL in terms of rushing yards. So, yeah, they found a balance, and I like what they're doing with the run game too. I mean, they picked up Jaquez Hunter, who I got to watch play quite a bit down here when he was with Auburn, watching him play in the SEC. They've got a pretty sneaky backfield.
And I do think that's going to help them. But what I want to shift to before we get into predicting the Rams season, how we think they'll do, and where they stand in the landscape of the NFC, the loaded NFC. Look, I want to talk about the defense because, believe it or not, Ty, I don't know if anybody told you this, but defense still does win championships.
I think it does. Yeah.
I've been told that it doesn't anymore, but I think it does too. Just ask the Eagles. But in all seriousness, but the Rams defense, you talk about losing a Hall of Famer in Aaron Donald, maybe one of the greatest defensive players in history. I don't think either one of us would argue that, or many people. And the fact that they were able to still have a competent defense, heck, I'll even say top 15 defense, with the way that, because I thought once they lost Aaron Donald, I thought the defense was going to be in rebuild mode. And then you trade away Jalen Ramsey, and I was like, okay, there goes another piece. But the Rams adding Taylor Rapp from Buffalo, some of the young guys, the guys out of Florida State that they drafted from Florida State's 2023 team. I think the Rams did a really nice job of hitting on their draft picks. And I think that's what's been successful to their defense and scheming it up. And I think, too, what we've learned about McVay and his coaching staff is it's not necessarily about having the greatest players. It's all about his scheme. He will scheme it up, and he will get his coaching staff to scheme it up just right, so they're in good positions. But I want to ask, how do you feel about the defense coming into this year, and how do you feel about them going into last year, and how do you feel as the season progressed?
When they brought in Chris Shula, and he's been around the organization for a little bit. He was, I think at one point he was a linebackers coach. I kind of forget. He shifted around a couple of different places. He's I like I don't know. They've done something pretty well there on defense where they built someone from within the organization, which is, you don't see that as often, but maybe more so on defense as you see that. But I mean, Shula's been there for a minute. And he's been a part of it all, and the changes they've had on that side of the ball hasn't had the negative effect that you would typically see with most other organizations, right? When you lose a coordinator, it could be devastating, and we see that all the time. But yeah, you're right. The Florida State kids, of course, you can't talk about Florida State without mentioning without mentioning Verse, who was a stud last year.
Yes.
Quietly had a great year. I think Byron Young had something like 10 or 11 sacks. Boy, they could get after a quarterback, and they could come through clutch. That 3-4 defense, which I'm not a huge fan of the 3-4. I realize probably 80% of the NFL runs the 3-4 defense, but I think it's more of like a 3-4 multiple look. But they are they've got a little bit of everything up front. And you're right; it's not necessarily about just raw talent. It's about guys that fit on with when you're talking about the offense, and the same thing can be said with the defense. I think the only area that is, I don't know how to feel just yet. I'm still kind of up in the air with the secondary. Of course, Cam Curl, who played at Arkansas, watched him play. I knew it after watching him just a couple of years here. He's going to play on Sundays. I used to talk to his dad, Greg Curl, every once in a while. I had him on a podcast that I used to be a part of, and he's a good guy. Greg Curl's a good guy, and his son's a hell of a player. But he didn't have the kind of year last year I think we all wanted him to have, but he's still he's capable of being a really good safety, along with Kitchens as well. But there's some question marks in the secondary and some other spots, but as far as their front seven, front six, front seven, they're in good shape and they're going to be competitive. Curious to see what we see out of Verse and Young and Turner and Fisk. Fisk was quietly a really good player for them, so I'm curious, but I think I think they're in pretty good shape moving forward.
And I want to say this too, Ty, is when we talk about the defense, like I know the old cliche is offense is what scores the points and what sells the tickets. But the defense is what wins you the championships. Like it's still the thing today. College, pros, whatever you like to slice it. And not a lot of people give this credit, but when the year the Rams won Super Bowl, they had a great offense. I don't think anybody would discredit that. But they also had a very, very great defense with Aaron Donald, Jalen Ramsey, and all those guys along to complement them. And Von Miller, how can we forget about him? So a defense still goes a long way. But like you said, Ty, what concerns me is that secondary because we saw at times last year where they did get torched. The Lions game stands out. You know, they gave up a big, long touchdown play, I believe that was to tie it in the fourth quarter. It was like 75 yards. And it was just a straight speed route. Just go and I'll throw it to you. But there's other times like the Minnesota game in the playoffs where they looked really, really good. Justin Jefferson was smothered. Now, a lot of that had to do with the front seven and maybe Minnesota's O-line being not as great as well. But the secondary did an amazing job on Justin Jefferson because he's one of those receivers. You just throw it in his vicinity, he's going to catch it 99.9% of the time. But I feel like you said, the secondary is the only thing that kind of scares me. Other than that, I'm with you on this. I think the Rams' potential is as far as McVay and Stafford can take them. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that.
Say that again. You kind of cut out there. What was that last part?
The Rams' potential is as far as McVay and his coaching staff will take them with the schemes and everything to go with it.
Oh well, yeah, for sure. They're they're a team that's not a lot of not a ton of Pro Bowlers, not a ton of individual talent. Like you're going to look at Philadelphia, Buffalo, Kansas City. I mean, talking about both AFC, NFC. Those are the teams that are just loaded down with incredible talent, right? And the Rams have these guys. They've either got someone like as young as a Puka Nacua, Kyron Williams, Blake Corum. We'll see about Jacquez Hunter. Maybe you've got a mix of young and old there, but these aren't guys that are going to be put on the front of a Wheaties box, right? Maybe Stafford and Puka Nacua, but outside of that, we'll see about Verse. I think Verse is a potential superstar in the making. But yeah, I mean, this is one of those teams. It's like you talk as much about the staff, about the coaching pedigree. Again, we already mentioned Chris Shula, of course, Sean McVay. You can't forget about the guy that's putting this whole thing together, and their general manager Les Snead, who's a part of one of the best front offices in all pro sports. If you want my honest opinion, when you've seen what they've pieced together over the last several years, no matter who the head coach was. Again, they're not doing it with superstars. They're not doing it with these young, insanely talented players. They're doing it with a mix of young and old and guys that just fit the scheme, and it's working out pretty well. Again, I'm not saying the Rams have no great players. Of course, Puka Nacua arguably is one of the top 10 players in the entire league, no matter the position. And maybe there's going to be some more guys added to that list this year from the Rams organization, from that roster. But over the years, they've done it with guys that are good enough that they fit the scheme, especially when you're talking about McVay. And I think that's going to always be, as long as Snead is there, that's going to probably always be the case. So, they need to hang on to McVay. I'm a big McVay guy, but this is definitely a team that if you know anything about the NFL, you're not just talking about the players, you're talking about the guys on the sidelines with the headsets and this coaching staff. They've done a fantastic job, and can't wait to see what they do for 2025.
And speaking of 2025, let's talk about the Los Angeles Rams schedule for 2025. A big part of where we think the Rams will go. Some people, even though the Rams are a little older, like you said, but they got some great young players, some people think the Rams are a dark horse to win the NFC. Some people think the Rams are going to win the division. I personally I think they'll win the division. I think it's between them and the Cardinals, in my opinion. And I think they could make some noise in the playoffs because they've shown their history of doing that. They gave the Lions a great game a couple years ago. Stafford's return game this past year against the defending champs Philadelphia Eagles, almost took them out. So the Rams are never out of the question. But as far as the 2025 season goes, Week 1 they start on Sunday, September 7th versus the Houston Texans, 4:25 on CBS. And this is kind of a fun little game to start, Ty, because you've got a young quarterback in C.J. Stroud out of Ohio State, and then you've got Matthew Stafford on the older side, the gunslinger, still wants to keep his throne. How do you see this matchup going, and who do you have winning?
Well, me being a college guy, I don't cover a lot of the NFL. I don't know the ins and outs of Houston outside of just C.J. Stroud. I know Stroud is a really good player. I think he had close to 4,000 yards total offense last year. If not, he had over 4,000 total yards. Capable player, the offense definitely will revolve around him. I think he's got a little bit of a turnover issue, but nothing that's too crazy. Going into year 3, I think.
Yes, year 3.
I don't know if I would. That could be a tough pick because maybe Houston's better than I think they are. But with that being in LA, with that being at home, and it's going to be on CBS, which means I'm going to get to watch it. I'm taking the Rams in the home opener there. I like the experience the Rams have, the disruption. I think Houston might have an issue with, if I remember right, I seem to remember reading something about their offensive line woes. They had some issues up front. Maybe I'm getting them mixed up with someone.
Yes.
But the Rams should be able to take a little bit of advantage. They've got youth on the defense for sure. The Rams do, but I would take the Rams as they're probably going to be the favorite, and I would take them.
I would say for me, what scares me about this is the Rams starting slow, because that seems to be the theme. They start slow but finish strong. Like, people write them off way too quick, as we know, Ty. And the thing is too, that's what I want to know. Are we going to get a strong performance to start the year for the Rams? Or are we going to get the Rams team that kind of comes out nonchalant, kind of like, okay, let's ease our way back into this, yada yada yada, kind of doing their flow, so to speak, like you would a normal everyday job. That's what concerns me about this game and why I think Houston could win this game. But I do have the Rams winning as well. I do think you said, being in LA, that's going to be a big environment hell. And the Texans coming from Houston, obviously, time change, shift in zones, and like you said, the O-line for Houston was really banged up last year, but they're younger on the O-line as well. And I think the Rams front seven, I think we'll get to C.J. Stroud. I think the Rams win this game as well and start off 1-0. But week 2, Sunday, September 14th, at the Tennessee Titans, 1 p.m. on CBS. Now, this is on paper, you would think, okay, the Rams should win this, no problem. But it's in Tennessee. It's against a really young quarterback in Cam Ward. And we sometimes see rookie years, like with Jaden Daniels, the rookies surprise everybody. And could this be what Tennessee was looking for? Their one great white hope. And maybe Cam Ward surprises the Rams. It's in Nashville. It's a different time zone for the Rams as well. How do you see this game going, Ty? Could Cam Ward surprise the Rams at all?
I guess this not that the Titans were, or have been an elite passing offense. So I don't know, with the Rams in the changes they've made in the secondary with some of the pieces that have come back. I feel like the Rams should be able to take care of business here. I mean, you're not wrong about their slow start. I think last year what were they, 1-5 or something to start the year. I remember thinking at that point this might actually be a really bad year for the Rams. Of course, they were able to get healthy and turn it all around. But I like them to start off 2-0 here.
I do too. I like the Rams to start 2-0 as well. I think Titans, I think they're building something very good over there. I like what they're building, but I do think it's going to take them a couple years. And I think Cam Ward, he'll have some breakout moments, but I don't think it's going to be against the Rams. I know we talked about the secondary maybe possibly being a weaker point in the defense, but the Titans just have really no receiver that scares you. So I feel like the Rams defense may win the day in this game. But week 3, Sunday, September 21st at the Philadelphia Eagles, 1 p.m. on Fox. This is a game I'm sure a lot of Rams fans are going to have circled. Going to Philly early in the year. So it's not going to be cold yet. And Philly, their first 2 games of the year, they play the Cowboys in Kansas City. So it's not like the Eagles get a warm-up. They play arguably the best team in the AFC and a team in the Cowboys who's division rivals and who could make some noise in the playoffs. You never know. But at Philadelphia, revenge game possibility. How do you feel about this, Ty?
Not super great. They went 0-2 against Philly last year. I hate that this one is in Philly. I hate that you lose to them at Philly in the playoffs, which, this may sound like a bitter, biased take, but I really think the Rams had them on their heels until the snow started to collect on the field. I said it. I was at a friend's house, and I said, look, the snow's going to pile up, and the Rams are in for a lot of hurt because they don't play on those kind of conditions. They don't play in that kind of weather. I think that's why I say I think it had been on a neutral field, and I realize that's not how it works. I think the Rams were the better team that day. They just couldn't overcome the weather. However, this year, Philly looks I don't know how Philly's not the favorite to win the whole thing again. I really I like what Philly is. Really well built, really well built together, or put together team, I'm trying to say. And they've got the Rams numbers. Sometimes that just happens, it just happens. It's like the Patriots, and if the Rams got to play the Patriots in the Super Bowl, put my money on the Patriots. I don't care if they're the underdog or not. One of those games they were the underdog, and they went on to win Tom Brady's first Super Bowl. It's just the way it is. And I just think Philly kind of has the Rams number right now. And that wasn't always the case. It is now, especially since moving to Los Angeles, away from St. Louis. That's going to be a hell of a travel. Although I think, the Rams last year, they didn't get their first road win. I don't think they got their first road win until like November. They weren't to start the year off. You talk about a cold start. That was part of it. They couldn't win away from LA. They were if they are, I think they're probably one of the worst home teams because LA fans aren't really Ram fans. They're just there for the scenery and the entertainment. They're not really there to root for the Rams. I hate to say it. I'm sorry. I think St. Louis fans were by far the more hardcore Ram fans than LA fans. Nothing against the true diehards in LA. I know they're there, but seems like there's a reason why away teams, whether it be the Niners or whoever, they travel well when it comes to playing inside LA or playing in that arena. But I think this is gonna be a tough one, man. I would right now, unless something changes between now once they get through fall camp and everything, I would put my money on Philly.
I would too. I would take the champs as well. I think, playing the Cowboys and Chiefs to start, I think will help the Rams in terms of Phillies playing them those 2 games first. But I also think it'll make them a little more battle-tested coming into this game, whereas the Rams kind of, play the Texans, which are no pushovers by any means, but playing the kind of rebuilding Titans team. Not that they're going to – not that they shouldn't be taken serious, because we know that in college football all too well, don't we, Ty, about Arkansas. We know all too well. And Louisville a couple of years ago, don't want to get into that right about now. But in all seriousness, though, I think this is lost too. Give me the champs. But week 4, Sunday, September 28th, versus the Indianapolis Colts, 4:05 on Fox. And this is another interesting game. Anthony Richardson, Is he going to be the quarterback by the time this game is played, or is he going to be injured, or what have you? I think the Colts have got a really good roster. They've constructed a really good roster with Michael Pittman. The defense for the Colts have always been borderline great. I think, and Pascal and Pittman on the offense, and Jonathan Taylor, one of the best running backs I think in the league. It's all about their quarterback situation, because if they get their quarterback situation figured out, the Colts can make some noise in their division and maybe in the playoffs. So by no means is this a pushover game in LA. And I think the Rams might be in for it. Might be in for a tougher game than a lot of people will expect. But how do you see this one going, Ty?
Yeah, again, I don't know a ton about what's going on with the Colts this year, but I mean, I know they've got some youth. I've seen a little bit of what they're doing, but I don't know. Rams at home, I think it's going to be an opposite year. I think they start off with a winning record as they get prepared for the Niners. Win or lose, they would still have a winning record against the Colts, but I think they're going to get off to a pretty good start. I think they take care of business against the Colts on the 28th. The real game will be, for sure, I know for a lot of Rams fans, it'll be October 2nd when they take on the Niners, but you shouldn't overlook Indianapolis. That's always kind of been the case, even, back before, Peyton Manning took over. Let's not forget a certain running back that would go on to be a part of the greatest show on turf. Don't forget where you picked him up at. But, they've always got something going on in Indianapolis. It shouldn't overlook anybody in the NFL, but I definitely wouldn't overlook Indy. But I would take the Rams.
I would too. I got the Rams at 3-1 as well. And it's kind of interesting looking at this front half of the schedule. It's kind of they didn't pack all the tough games in front. Now the back half seems even a little lighter. We're going to talk about it here in a minute. The Ravens, the Niners, but it's kind of nice that they spreaded it out. They didn't just play all your tough games first, and then after the bye week we'll cupcake it. I like how they kind of spreaded it out a little bit. Kind of gave them like, okay, play Philly, then you play a good Colts team, and then we kind of see as we go down the schedule here.
Yeah.
But week 5, Thursday, October 2nd, first is the San Francisco 49ers, 8:15 p.m. on Prime Video. So get your Amazon out for this one. This is interesting because the Rams have had their struggles with San Francisco, as all Rams fans know. And whatever it is, except for the 1 year in the NFC Championship game, the Niners have had your number. I don't know what it is, if it's just better coaching, if it's a better system. I don't know what it is, but the Rams, this is, I think, their year to finally possibly win against San Francisco. Finally, maybe possibly sweep this year. It is in the division, though. But, I mean, the Niners, Deebo Samuel, he's gone to Washington. George Kittle's getting a little older. The old line getting a little older as well. The defense, injury prone. I mean, Brandon Ayuk, ACL tear. How's he going to perform? This is week 5, so you're kind of catching him early in the year. Is Brock Purdy, is he the guy? I mean, or is he just a system QB like they always say? I mean, how do you think this game's going to go, Mr. Ty? Is this
going to go just like
the Rams?
It's going to go just like last year. They swept them last year. The Rams swept the Niners last year.
I got you.
And I'm all for it. And I'm going to tell you, I absolutely hate the Niners. And I was so happy to see that. I would not have guessed that, especially, starting off. Although they played Detroit week 1 pretty well last year. I seem to remember Stafford going off and Kupp having a really good game against Detroit. But, last year of all players, Atwell was the leading receiver in that one, and that didn't happen very often last year. And that's a result of, things just not going their way on offense and still beating San Francisco 27-24. And I loved it. I didn't care if the Rams lost all the way up until they played Seattle again or San Francisco again. If those are your only 2 wins all year, by God, those are the 2 that I want to win. But yeah, they swept them last year. I know it's hard to believe. I don't know. I was talking to a buddy of mine not long ago, and he's not really a hardcore NFL guy, but he said, yeah, the Niners got your number. They're going to do it again. I said, what? Go 0 for 2? against the Rams, staying at home. Is that what's going to happen? Because I think that's what's going to happen this year. Rams are going to take care of business. I like the way the Rams. I like the matchup. I don't know if they sweep. I don't know if they sweep San Francisco necessarily. The Niners are. You're right. They've been a thorn in the side of the Rams, going all the way back to when they were in St. Louis. I can remember Isaac Bruce like tearing up when they beat the Niners at the end of the year, and just he'd been there. He was a Ram draft pick. He was one of the first stars in St. Louis for the Rams. That moment's always been with me all the way from when I was 13, 14 years old to being a 41-year-old man, seeing Isaac Bruce tearing up over the fact they beat the Niners and did special things that year, going on to win that Super Bowl. But my hatred for the Niners is pretty deep. So I hope they sweep them. I like them in this one at home.
So it's funny, Ty. I have a best friend that he's a diehard Eagles fan, and we banter with one another back and forth all the time because I'm a diehard Cowboys fan. So, but I'll tell him all the time, I'm like, this is the year. We're gonna get you this year. And he's like, you keep saying that. We're gonna catch you at Super Bowls. We're already at 2, and you all haven't been to an NFC Championship game in nearly 30 years. That kind of banter, which gets kind of tiresome that people use that, but it's true. But as far as this game goes here, I agree. I think at home the Rams will win. I do think the crowd will be split, though. I think it'll be 50-50. I think there'll be some Niners fans there. Like, the Niners seem to pack a pretty good crowd in SoFi, and I know they're in pretty close proximity. So I don't think it'll be a home game on paper, but if typically these are 50-50 crowds, maybe 60-40 Rams most of the time. Would you agree with that?
In St. Louis, or excuse me, in LA?
Yes.
You think it'll be 60-40 Rams fans?
Yes.
Probably. Yeah. Niners love taking over that. They love taking over SoFi Stadium. They've proven they can do it. This goes back to what I said. I mean, I would say that probably 50% of the Rams fans that are there are actually there to watch the Rams and to actively root for the Rams. And they've probably been fans since they moved back to LA. Then the other 50% are just there. It's like, oh, wow, look, we went inside SoFi. I have my issues with moving back to, of course, I know they're in Inglewood, which is where they play at SoFi, but it's that whole area. Like, I don't think they're the most diehard fans unless it's like the Dodgers or, of course, the Lakers. Like, those are their teams.
Lakers, maybe.
Yeah. But it's not the case with the Rams.
Like, I was just going to say the Clippers, I mean, they have somewhat of a fan base, but it's not all there either.
If you had to vote your most diehard fans in that area, it would probably be the Clippers, though, right? Like, you got to actually be a fan of the game of basketball and a fan of that organization to not be a Lakers fan, because that's what LA is. It's a bandwagon. True. That's a bandwagon area if I've ever seen one, and that's why I didn't like them moving back to LA. I get it was a financial reason. I understand that's a far larger network over there. It's a far larger market than St. Louis, but their fans are just there because they're winning. I guarantee you, if the Rams were bottom 4 in the NFC, they wouldn't get half the capacity or half the amount of fans there, which is probably true for a lot of organizations, no matter the sport, but especially, I mean, look at the Trojans. Look at USC, man. I mean, they could have a 9-10 win season, and they can't put, I mean, how many fans will show up to the Coliseum? No one wants to watch them play. And the same for USC basketball, where Eric Musselman's at. Like, it's just the worst. It's the bandwagon capital of the United States. It's a bunch of bandwagon fans. They don't give a shit about sports there, really. They're just there to be a part of the entertainment, to watch the entertainment and have a good time, which is fine. Hey, no hatred, but I like those pure fans. I like the people that are there thick and thin.
Like, and there's a lot of celebrities there, like, and they'll pan to them in the crowd, and it's like not to go down a rabbit hole, but it's just like, really, I don't care that LeBron James is watching the Rams. Like, good for him. Like, I want you to talk about the game. Or Taylor Swift.
Oh
It's just
God.
like,
And I
it's
get
just
it,
like, show me.
Yeah. I know we don't want to
Go
go.
ahead. Go ahead.
I know we don't want to go too deep down a rabbit hole, but I do. I kind of, like my thing with the Celtics. I've become a casual. I'm not an NBA fan like I used to be. I've become casual, and the Celtics are good. They're set up for the next few years to be, with Tate and those guys. They're set up to be really a problem in the East, and I'm all about it. That's great. I've become a casual fan of the sport. It's not because the Celtics are bad. You know what? I hung with them, especially after the KG, Paul Pierce, Rondo, after the big three were all broken up. I still hung in there and I watched them. Still a big fan. But that's come down because of the game. The NBA game has just gotten harder to watch. The NFL to me is still fun to watch. And I stuck with the Rams through the terrible mid-90s, and then even after Green went down with his injury, the star future quarterback for the Rams, they had to bring in this guy, Kurt Warner. I hung in there, man. I said, I didn't know what to expect. I was 15 years old, but I thought, you know what? I'm ride or die. That's my team. I don't think you get that in Los Angeles. I just don't. I mean, I want people to tell me I'm wrong. I just don't think you get that out there. All right. Ran over.
But and I agree with you though, because it's just like me, I'm a diehard Cowboys fan. I'm a diehard Nuggets fan. I live and die with those teams. And people could pick on me all they want about the Cowboys, about, oh, you're going to go to another Super Bowl? Is this your year? And I just jokingly wipe it off. But talking about diehard fans, this actually segues great into our next game. Week 6, Sunday, October 12th, at the Baltimore Ravens, 1 p.m. on Fox. You want to talk about diehard fans? They love Ravens football. They're in an empty seat in that stadium, especially from what the foundation that Ray Lewis built there. Ravens fans, they're something real. But as far as this game goes, though, Ty, going to Baltimore, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Jackson is him. I still think he's one of the funnest dual threat quarterbacks I've watched play since Michael Vick. And I know we could make jokes about the dog fighting and all that, and the problems that Michael Vick had off the field. And all of his antics, off the field in Atlanta. I get it, but man, he was fun to watch. I mean, Michael Vick did something to the game of, to the NFL that I don't know, it's not like he invented the dual threat quarterback. We had plenty of those, just nothing like we saw out of Vick. Not only did he have the ability to run the ball, the raw arm strength and all these things you could, just an incredible player. He brought something to the game that I don't know. It was so fun to watch. By the way, he was a cheat code on Madden, but that's what I feel like Jackson's done for the Ravens. He's I don't know. It's hard to compare the two. Obviously they're still kind of two different styles, but very similar in that they can both their ability to make things happen outside of the pocket, inside and outside the pocket. They're good. Baltimore's going to be tough, and you're right. That is a die-hard fan base, kind of like the Cleveland Brown fans who were so furious when they left to go to Baltimore. I get it. As a Ram fan now, I get it. They left L.A. to go to St. Louis only to go back to L.A. But they are diehard fans. I'm not going to lie. If the Rams get knocked out of the playoffs and Baltimore's left in the AFC, I'm rooting for Baltimore. That's always the team I go to root for. I like him as a quarterback, and I like that organization. Their fans are diehard. I'm that way with a lot of the lesser known teams in the NFL. I always want the Dolphins to go on a run. I want them to do great. I don't know why, but I just do. I want to see them do great things. But yeah, Baltimore's gonna be a tough one. I would take Baltimore in this one, mostly because it's a travel game. It's a hell of a flight for the Rams, and we know that those you're already at a disadvantage as the away team, but then you're going into Baltimore where all the diehards are. I would take Jackson and that Baltimore team over the Rams.
I would too as well. I've got the Rams falling to 4-2. I think this is a tough game. I know they played the Ravens, I think it was a couple years ago, and they won that game, believe it or not, in Baltimore. But once again, Lamar wasn't healthy in that game, which, not throwing any excuses out, because I don't like using the injuries as an excuse. If you're out on the field, you're you play with who you got. But now that Lamar is healthy, I think it'll be a whole lot tougher to contain Lamar Jackson. And he's kind of revolutionized the running quarterback. I mean, Lamar's got the Madden cover. He's getting endorsement deals. He's taken the mobile quarterback to the next level. And as a Louisville fan, I'm proud to see that one of our guys is doing fantastic things on Sundays and making his way there. But Week 7, Sunday, October 19th, versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, 9:30 a.m. NFL Network on NFL Plus. This is the London game, so it's a neutral site game. Jacksonville plays in London quite a bit, but the Rams going to London, a really different time zone and a different day. I think they're a day ahead of us or something like that. How do you see this game playing out, Ty? Because these international games get really weird. I mean, we saw a couple last year that was just like, huh?
Yeah, I when you play overseas like that, I don't know. It seems like those games are pretty unpredictable. You know, they got to play Jacksonville. I think has to play Seattle the week before. I remember glancing at their schedule, and you know that maybe they're still pretty tough. Like Pete Carroll, that team, Seattle's still a pretty physical football team. And that's just the reputation they've had, especially on either side of the ball, but obviously on defense. They're playing overseas. I don't know a ton about Jacksonville. Don't know what's going on over there really. The Rams, I feel like based on just my basic knowledge of these two rosters, the Rams are a better roster. By how much, I don't really know. I guess this is kind of a coin flip because it's overseas. It's in London. Jacksonville probably has a fan base over there, considering they play there so often, or it feels like it. As you mentioned earlier, I would take the Rams, but not real high confidence, simply because that's a hell of a trip. Especially Rams are going to be coming from LAX, so I don't know. I don't know what that flight entails if they're going to travel all across the continent of the United States, and then they're going to hop on over over the pond if they're going to fly it that way. I guess I don't know what route they're going to take, but that's a hell of a trip. So I guess I would take the Rams.
I would too. I got the Rams at 5-2. I think this will be one of them games where it'll be like the first half, maybe jet lag for the Rams, where it'll be like a 10-3 Jaguars lead going into halftime. And then they'll kind of get their wimps about them and then pull away late. But I do agree. I've got the Rams winning as well. Then you got a week 8 bye week. So you got 2 weeks to prepare for when you go back home to play the Saints on Sunday, November 2nd for week 9, 4:05 on Fox. So they did give you 2 weeks after the London game. Saints, they're a young team. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Tyler Shuck drafted out of Louisville. Is he going to be the starting quarterback? Kellen Moore in year 1. The Saints defense still got dogs in Cam Jordan and Demario Davis. The Saints on paper, they're a very young team, but they still got some veteran-proven players and championship-level caliber players. But in LA, 2 weeks to prepare. I won't say this is a layup for the Rams, but how do you feel about this?
Well, you never know with these year 1 head coaches. And, he's young. I mean, he's the same age I think McVay was when he took over the Rams. I think he's 35, 36 years old.
I believe so.
I remember when he played at Boise State, he made the cover of NCAA football. I'm pretty sure he did. Early 2000s, I think he made the cover. But you never know. He was the coordinator. He was the offensive coordinator for the Eagles, and their offense obviously was pretty good. But they definitely, I would argue, they, like you said earlier, their defense had a lot to do with that. But you just never know about year 1 head coaches. I don't know if this is going to be a disaster or if this is going to be another like Sean McVay, even though he's not from that tree of coaches necessarily. I think he got his start with the Cowboys several years back. But
yes,
I don't know what to make of them year 1. Year 1 coaches can be especially when they're younger and they're hungry, and they're kind of making some changes on both sides of the ball. Obviously, with this new change, I would go with the Rams. It does feel like a layup. It really does. Getting the bye week, I almost prefer they get that bye week. I wish they were coming out of that bye getting ready for the Niners or the someone within the division instead of the Saints. But I'd give me the Rams for sure.
I would too. I think Kellen Moore. I think he's a really good offensive coordinator. I think he will. Whatever disadvantage you have, he will make sure. Like Sean McVay, like we were talking about earlier, Ty, about how Sean McVay hides your weaknesses. Like whatever your weakness is, Sean McVay is like, okay, we can work with that. Let me get your strengths. Let me pull the most juice I can out of this orange. And I feel like Kellen Moore will be that way with the Saints. They'll have a lot of weaknesses, but I feel like he'll pull out a lot of their strengths. But I do have you all winning this game. I would not be surprised if this was a nail biter because of the bye week. Maybe the Rams come out lackadaisical and not taking the Saints serious. But I do think it's a win, and they will be 6-2. Week 10, Sunday, November 9, at the San Francisco 49ers, 4:25 on Fox. This is another one. It's in San Francisco. Could the Rams? I mean, this is going to be a tough game in San Francisco. Them Niner fans are for real, Ties. We know they love their team. How do you feel about this game?
Like I said, I think it could be a repeat of last year. It could be. I don't think the Rams necessarily took any steps back. I don't know. Of course, it's gonna you're gonna rely heavily on the the other skill position guys that aren't named Puka Nacua. Maybe Tyler Higbee does enough at tight end to keep the rookie off his heels and has a big impact with the offense year one. But Higbee's limited, even though he's been with the Rams forever. He's got a ceiling, and we don't know, like I said, Devontae Adams, who are they getting? They're going to have to rely heavily on these guys. But when you play the Niners, though, it's almost always, it comes down to the trench play. It's going to come down to the line of scrimmage play. I didn't have a lot of faith in the Rams offensive line a year ago. And yet, you know what? They ended up, once they got healthy, looked pretty solid. This is going to be a game that really could come down to the health. Who's the healthiest? I think the Niners are going to be pretty good. How good, I don't know. I would, they swept them last year, and I don't know that Rams team, they weren't exactly healthy when they did it. And I don't know that I would have said coming into the year that I felt like the Rams were the better team. And this year I do. I think the Rams are the better organization. And I don't know. It always comes down to injuries with these two teams and trench play. And so the availability is going to matter and who could win at the line of scrimmage. And give me the Rams. I think that defensive line, this is the kind of game I think that defensive line might have a shot at creating the biggest, having the biggest impact in this game. Is versing the guys, disrupting the timing of the offense, the quarterback, and his, trying to find his open targets. I think they're going to disrupt that timing a little bit, and it's going to be a problem for the Niners. They can do a little bit of everything the Niners can. This will be a good matchup, but I think the Rams get the sweep again. Hard to do, but I think they can do it.
So I got a split. I got the Rams at 6-3. I think that they go to San Francisco and lose. And a lot of this hinges on Christian McCaffrey's health. Because I think if he's healthy, I think there's a split. Because I think he feeds off a home environment. Like, I've noticed when he plays on the road, he still does Christian McCaffrey things, but his energy level is not there. But when he comes back home, he's a different dude. He's still a superstar regardless. But like you said, I think if he's healthy, I think the Rams lose this game. I do think, like you said, it's going to come down to trench play. It always does. It seems like in every division, it's always the trench play. Who can run the ball and who can be more effective. In my opinion, I think it's a split. The Rams are 6-3. And this sets up this next game because I'm looking forward to this tie. I would be, as an unbiased fan, no dog in this fight. You may feel different about this, but I'm looking forward to watching this on Sunday when we get to Week 11, Sunday, November 16th, versus the Seattle Seahawks, 4:05 on Fox, and it's the Cooper Kupp return game to LA. How sweet it would be if Cooper Kupp could stun the Rams his first game back with his new team. How are you feeling about this game, Ty? Because there's going to be a lot of emotions when he steps on that field again, back in LA with a different color.
Yeah, it's gonna be weird. I'm not gonna lie, it's gonna be very weird seeing him in a Seahawks jersey. Better than a Niner jersey, but it's still gonna be really weird. They, Seattle. Geno Smith is he still starting quarterback?
So Geno Smith got traded to Las Vegas. Their starting quarterback is Sam Darnold now.
Okay, Sam Darnold. All right. Yeah, shows you I haven't done my research on my own division, but I think they're going to be.
It's all good. It's all good.
They got a lot of new pieces. It sounds like. I mean, if you're bringing in a reliable target in Cooper Kupp, I mean, you talk about availability and health. Cooper Kupp, like this will be one. Let's hope he's healthy for this game, right? Something that he's struggled with over the years is being available. If he is, it could make for a really interesting game. It will be an emotional game. Him and McVay are boys, and him and Stafford are boys. This will be it'll be an emotional one for those guys, I'm sure. But I think healthy or not, I like the Rams. Again, I don't know a ton about what's going on with Seattle, as I only cover college athletics, college football, but don't know a lot about what's going on at Seattle. But I don't know. Off the top of my head, I would take the Rams.
I would too. I got the Rams at 7-3 now. I do think, Mike McDonald, who was at Michigan, he's a great defensive coordinator. Seattle's defense is going to be something serious, but their offense, adding Cooper Kupp, if Kenneth Walker could be healthy, if Sam Darnold was his 1 year with Minnesota, was it a fluke? I think the Seahawks, I think they could be contenders in the division. Because it just seems like Seattle's always fundamentally, let's run the ball. And you could speak to this too, Ty. Seattle, even under Pete Carroll, was a run the ball first football team, even when they had Russell Wilson in his prime years. That's part of the reason why I think Russell Wilson wanted out of Seattle. He was tired of run the ball first and then let's throw. He wanted to throw and then run. He wanted to do the cool highlight plays. And Pete Carroll kind of had to rein him in and be like, no. We run the ball. This is the formula. This is what works. But I would take the Rams. I do think Seattle's O-line being, they've got like 3 rookies on the O-line, and they've got a guy who's been there, I think, 8 years now. And now their O-line by this point could either be really, really good or it could be awfully bad by this point. And I think the Rams front seven, I think, will take advantage of this.
Forgot. Yes,
Week 12, Sunday, November 23rd. First, go ahead. You're good.
I was gonna say I forgot. Carroll went to Vegas, right? He went to coach the Raiders.
Yes, Las Vegas.
That's right.
But Sunday, November 23rd, first is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 8:20 on NBC on Sunday Night Football. So the Rams are in prime time. It's solo stage. And this right here, Ty, you can correct me if you're wrong, if I'm wrong on this one. But I feel like this is a good matchup. I think the Rams and Buccaneers are kind of the same team in a way. Both love to win in the trenches, I would say Stafford is a little better quarterback than Baker. I think Baker has shown in Tampa that he can be a starter for years to come. But both have, Tampa, Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. This, to me, Ty, is a really, really good, I feel like they're both the same team on paper. How do you feel about this game?
Yeah, I think, Evans is a fantastic target to throw at. He's still there, right? I'm not crazy. Mike Evans is still in Tampa.
Yes, you're still there. He's still going strong too. Yes, Evans is still in Tampa, and he's currently had 10 straight 1,000-yard seasons.
Yeah, I mean he's a mismatch.
Still going strong.
He's a nightmare. I mean, Mike Evans is a nightmare. Yeah, that could be the defining matchup, right? what the Rams have going on in the secondary versus Mike Evans, who's a stud. Yeah, I think yeah, he went over 1,000 yards last year, if I remember right, and it took him to the final weeks to do it, but he did it. Baker Mayfield was a surprise. I would never have thought that dude would have the kind of performance that he did last year. I mean, he was fantastic, and the craziest thing was he doesn't have I don't recall him having a very strong offensive line. I think he was sacked like 42 times last year. Of course, some of that was his own. Like I remember Tampa fans on Twitter complaining that it's his fault that he's getting all these sacks. It's kind of like Taylor Green at Arkansas. Anytime the guy gets sacked or if he's pressured, the Hog fans are blaming him, not the offensive line. But yeah, it's going to be that's all. It's always a good game. I can remember when the Rams were in St. Louis playing Tampa, and back in the Mike Allstott days, like, damn, those are fun games to watch. And I think that's still the case. Baker Mayfield sells tickets. He's fun to watch. I've always kind of rooted for Baker.
Yes.
His background at OU, and he looks up to Brandon Burlsworth, former Razorback, who was also a walk-on, considered one of the greatest walk-ons to ever play the game. And Baker's he's cut from that similar kind of, cloth, although, getting drunk and arrested on Dixon Street isn't a great look for Baker Mayfield, but you know what? He had fun with it. What happens on Dixon? What did he say on was it Cowherd when he said Dixon Street will get you? And that's the truth, man. You got to be careful for you folks that are coming down to Fayetteville. Be careful on Dixon Street. But he's fun to root for. I kind of root for him, and he was with the Rams, for a short while, helped them beat the Raiders in a midweek game. I remember that because I watched it when I was on a cruise. But yeah, this will be a tough matchup. It always is. Is this one's in LA or is it in Tampa?
It's in LA this time around.
Okay, it's in LA. I'm gonna lean towards the Rams in this one because simply that's a hell of a travel going from Tampa to Los Angeles and vice versa. These are two. You're right. I seem to remember thinking this the last couple of years when looking at Tampa. They do kind of remind you of one another on paper. Although, on paper you could make the argument that maybe Baker might be slightly ahead of Matt Stafford currently. If you just look at the stats.
Wow.
On the stat sheet, I mean, Baker threw for like 4,600 yards last year. Ran for like 400 yards. I think he had 45 touchdowns. I mean, yeah, I think Baker, I would probably say Baker on paper in terms of what he does for his offense and the production, him and Stafford aren't that far apart. Now, obviously they're different kind of quarterbacks. Stafford's not going to run around. He's not a mobile quarterback, but Baker can make things happen inside and outside the pocket. Again, he's fun to watch. He's not Lamar Jackson, right? We're not talking about a Michael Vick here, but he's pretty fun to watch. And I think he can do some things. Go ahead.
And I think too, also, I also think too, Ty, is I've got the Buccaneers winning. I got the Rams falling to 7-4. And the reason why is I feel like if Godwin and Evans are both healthy, I feel like the Rams secondary, there's a lot of question marks to that. And we even talked about this at the top of the broadcast, how especially you as a Rams fan said, there's some questions there that need to be answered. And I feel like if the Rams are still trying to figure out the secondary by week 12, I think it could be troublesome. It could be very, very troublesome, especially when you play two Hall of Fame receivers. I think first ballot in Mike Evans, and I think Chris Godwin, I think is a future Hall of Famer. I don't know about first ballot. That's not up to me to decide, but I do think he's had a Hall of Fame career. And I do think if the Rams secondary is not figured out, I think this is a game that could be had. And I feel like that's why I'm going to pick the Buccaneers here. I think Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are going to have themselves a day against this secondary, and it's going to be a loss for the Rams, and they're going to fall to 7-4. But week 13, Sunday, November 30th, at the Carolina Panthers, 1 p.m. on Fox. Now, on paper, like we said, with the Saints, this could be another layup. Who knows with the NFC South? It's always nuts out there. Tampa should be the favorite to win it running away, but Carolina drafted Trent McMillan with the 8th pick out of Arizona. I don't know how much of him you watch, Ty, but Trent McMillan, he's a big, stuffy receiver, possession catch, but his route running is kind of subpar at times. Carolina doesn't really have anybody, when you look at him, that is going to burn a secondary. Adam Thielen was great at Minnesota, and he's great in the red zone still, but Bryce Young, is he the future in Carolina? How do you see this game going late in the year for the Rams?
I would go with the Rams. I think they're just I feel like this would be a good matchup, but I think the Rams would probably walk in there and take care of business. Again, they're a lot of change has happened in Carolina over the last couple of years, but I don't know. I think the Rams would probably be in a pretty good position to win this. I think there's Carolina's going to be scratching and clawing. They might be desperate at this point to get wins, but I would take the Rams, even though it's a hell of a travel game. I think the Rams would probably come out of this one with the dub.
I'm going to take the Rams too and have them at 8-4. But I do want to ask you, because the rest of the way, this is your only game that you would play in the weather, so to speak, in the elements, other than maybe Seattle. My bad. How do you feel about playing in the cold? Do you think that will affect the Rams at all, like it did when they went to Chicago all those years ago, or do you think they've kind of toughened up more?
I don't know. I mean, what you're talking about Carolina, right? On November 30th.
Yes, when they go play Carolina. And in North Carolina, it could be snowing by this point. And do you think that'll affect the Rams? Because we've seen them in cold weather kind of shake up a little bit and not play Ram football. Do you think that'll affect at all?
I'm not familiar with their weather. I didn't realize they got snow that time of year. If there's snow on the field and it's cold, then obviously you're going to count the team that's from the West out, right? You're probably going to say, well, let's maybe not count them out, but it's going to be tough. It's a tough uphill climb. They will have they'll have Seattle December 18th, which will be cold and rainy probably. But I think they'd be okay in that type of environment. But yeah, if you're playing in the snow, and again, we saw what happened when they did that against Philadelphia. Now Philadelphia is Philadelphia. Carolina is not Philadelphia. I think no matter what, I kind of feel like the Rams should be able to take care of business.
Gotcha. Because I've talked to a couple different of Rams fans and people in my family that they grew up in LA, and they'll come here during the winter time. They'll be like, "Oh, it's freezing cold. I don't like it." And then in LA, when it's like 50, they say it's cold, and it's just like, this is nice weather for us. Like 50's nothing, but to them it's cold. But week 14, Sunday, December 7th, at the Arizona Cardinals, 4:25 on Fox. In the desert, I had the Cardinals, I think, as a playoff team right now, and that could surprise some people. But I really think they've shown some great progression. Kyler Murray, I think, and finally found his true number one in Marvin Harrison Jr., which he was a stud at Ohio State. His dad was great in the NFL as well with the Colts. And the defense for Arizona is slowly becoming a force to be reckoned with in this division. And as we know, Ty, from watching Arizona and Arizona State in the college world, things get weird out in the desert. Just ask the Oregon Ducks about that. Just ask Justin Herbert. But how do you see this trip going to the desert for the Rams?
I don't know. This is the Cardinals are always an interesting. They blasted the Rams last year. They won by like 30 points. I was furious after this game. Of course, I wasn't able to watch. I was keeping up with it on my phone and trying to watch, trying to catch some streams where I could. But I definitely thought they played Buffalo pretty damn close the first week. Arizona did, but I still felt like the Rams should be able to take care of business here, and they surprised me. Murray had a really good game. Harrison Jr., I think, had one of the best games of his season against that awful Rams secondary. And I don't know if they've settled in or not. I know they went winless preseason, which doesn't mean anything, but they went winless in their preseason, got off to a little bit of a rocky start in September. They're always kind of a coin flip, every year it's like, well, is this the year Murray's going to get it? Well, they added Harrison Jr. and they had Connor running the ball, and Murray's a dual threat guy. He can make things happen. He could, he's like a magician at times at the quarterback spot. I don't know. This is a tough one. I would probably take the Rams. I don't know if I'm with you if they're a playoff team or not. I don't know if I'm there. I haven't done all my research yet. Obviously I'm still getting through recruiting stuff for college right now. I typically pick up my NFL research in July when I've got nothing else better to do. But right now, based on kind of what I know about Arizona, you obviously know a lot more about what's going on there. But I would probably off the top of my head take the Rams, but who knows, right? It could be a coin flip. They're usually pretty entertaining games, other than what happened last year when the Rams got blasted in Arizona by 30 points.
made all Rams steaming mad. But I'll say this: I have this as a loss for the Rams. I have the Rams at 8-5 at this point. I do think Arizona is a playoff team. Like I said, I think they can win 19 games. I don't know about winning the division because it's hard to count out the Rams, obviously, and the Niners, and the Seahawks are a mystery. But I do think this is a loss for the Rams in the desert. And I do think the next game coming up, I know this may sound cliche, but I still think there's a part of Stafford that wants to beat Detroit. I do think that's still there. As a competitor, you're like, I just want to beat my former team. I want to show them at least once I can beat them. So there could be a little bit of that coming into this game. So I do think it'll be a competitive game and it'll be a fun game. But Week 15, Sunday, December 14th, versus the Detroit Lions, 4:25 on Fox in LA. Now, this is going to be interesting, Ty, because, it's the Stafford against Detroit, and that's going to be the headline, I'm sure, for that week. Fox is going to use that to their advantage, which they should. And the last couple games have been fantastic games. I would say maybe games of the year candidates. But Aaron Glenn, Ben Johnson got new head coaching jobs, which God bless them. I'm happy for them. I hope they find much success. So Detroit's going to be – they got new offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. And by this point, they should have it figured out. Detroit returns most of their team. They lost a few pieces, and they drafted really well. Aiden Hutchinson's supposed to be back this upcoming year. This is always a fun game. How do you see this one playing out, Ty? Does Stafford finally beat Detroit?
This is you're right. This has been probably game of the year material. I'm shocked this wasn't a Monday night game, by the way. I thought for sure this would be a Monday nighter. The following week the Rams have Seattle and they're on the road. That's kind of a tough ending of the schedule for the Rams, which if anything keeps the Rams out of the playoffs, it could be those final 5 games of the regular season. So and so that puts a lot of pressure to win because you've only got, I think, of their final 6 games, I think they only have 2 of which at home. And they're both not going to be easy. And Detroit is going to be a tough game. Thank God this is in LA, or excuse me, in SoFi. Thank God it's in SoFi. But this is a tough one. And I don't know. Yeah, they've had some changes. I know Detroit's had some changes. Some key pieces are gone when you're talking about the staff. But boy, it's hard not to buy into that head coach, what they've got going on. I know Frank Ragnow, former Razorback, has retired, and he was considered like kind of the heart and soul of that offense and that offensive line. Like that's a pretty big loss. I don't think you replace someone like Frank Ragnow overnight. I'm going to take the Rams.
Nope.
Like the Rams are going to win it's going to be a line of scrimmage battle on both sides. But I would take off the top of my head. I would take the Rams, but this could be listen, who knows, right? It's always kind of like you mentioned, it could be a game of the year type of matchup, but it's a very interesting game though, right? December 14th. And it's a mid-afternoon game. This isn't a Sunday night game. It's not a Monday night game. It's not a Thursday night game. It's a middle of the afternoon game. I'm surprised they did not try to
Mm-hmm.
get this one for a prime time, for a Thursday night or a Sunday night kind of, game, and yet they're playing it in the mid-afternoon. When I saw that, I shook my head. This could be game of the year, and it probably will be one of the better NFC non-divisional matchups. It could be one of the best ones of the year. This
Yes.
is two really strong NFC teams going at it.
Yes. And I'll say this, and I may regret it later, but I think the winner of this game will go a long way in determining who wins the NFC, in my opinion. I think it's going to be that impactful. I may regret saying that when I watch both teams play throughout the year, but I think it's going to have that type of impact. But I've got the Lions winning. I got the Rams going to 8-6. I think this is going to be a shootout in LA. I think this is going to be like the Buffalo game, Ty. This is going to be one of them where the defenses become non-existent, and it's going to be Stafford and Goff slinging the ball, and it's going to be the first one, I think, to 35 wins kind of games. Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sonic and Knuckles and Montgomery and Gibbs. I think they're built for those type of games. I don't necessarily know if the Rams can hang if the Lions get over 30. But I do think this will be one of them. Whoever has the ball last, like I said, will win. And I think in this case, it will be Detroit. But like I said, though, I think this will go a long way in deciding who wins the NFC, in my opinion. I think it'll be that impactful. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, Ty, but what do you think about that sentiment?
I think Goff is a proven guy. I mean, he helped the Rams get to the Super Bowl years ago. He's proven that he can do it in Detroit. I mean, I've had people tell me, "Oh, he's just a system guy." McVay got him to the Super Bowl, and I said all along, no, Goff's a really good quarterback. But I think between the two, I would take Stafford over Goff, at least in this system. And when I'm talking about McVay and what they do on offense, I like, and I don't think the Rams have much of a home field advantage ever. This might be a game where they could, because the fans are very well aware. This has become a bit of a rivalry, not just in the NFC, but in the NFL.
Yes.
This has become a rivalry game. And I think the fans, even though I think there are a lot of bandwagon fans over there, they're very well aware of it. But I would take, and I want to be clear too. I don't think Baker Mayfield overall is a better quarterback than Gafford. I would argue that on the stat sheet, he has looked the better quarterback. But I think Stafford is the more talented, more gifted, more arm talent, can do it he can make average receivers look great. He can make great receivers look like Hall of Famers. And combined with being in that offense, right? Especially when they've got a run game. You say, I don't think they can hang with them if they go over 30 points. I disagree. I think they can because of Puka Nacua. I think Devontae Adams could. We talked about it earlier. Devontae Adams is still a very reliable receiver, very reliable quarterback. Tyler Higbee is a longtime tight end in the NFL, even though he's kind of limited. I think they do actually have the weapons to go 30 plus with the likes of Detroit at home. Now, neutral field or in Detroit, that might be a little bit different argument. But in this environment, it will be a good game. I think they could hang with Detroit at home going 30 plus. I guess the question really is, it's another who wins at the line of scrimmage. And because of what the Rams front six did last year, I think they're only going to be better next year up front. And I think they've tweaked the secondary a little bit. Maybe it's enough that it's going to put them over the edge, and maybe that kind of helps things out. I really think, and this might be biased, I don't know, I don't care. Even if I wasn't a Ram fan, I would still say I think the Rams are a legit top 4 team in the NFL, and Detroit would be in there somewhere too, where I don't know. They'd be in the top 5. I think Detroit overall is a little bit behind the Rams, even though they've beaten the Rams. I still think they're a little bit behind, and that's because the Rams are going to be better up front on the defensive line, and I like their skill position guys. I like the experience that they have between McVay and Stafford. And Puka Nacua, I don't know, we don't talk enough about him. Puka Nacua is healthy, could probably be the best receiver in this league. So, again, Detroit, they've got big losses on their coaching staff. Last year, they had some injuries and stuff they also had to deal with. Everybody does. And like you said, we don't like using that as a crutch, but it can matter, right? Like you look at the Rams, when Aaron Donald wasn't available, that was a different defense, right? Now, that to be fair, Aaron Donald is like a once every 25-year player, but still, it's a valid argument because they weren't the same team without him. And the same thing could be said of Stafford. If Stafford is hurt, this is obviously not the same team. Or if Puka Nacua goes down this year, they're going to struggle. If Puka Nacua gets injured, this is not going to be a great year for the Rams. Well, if it's a long-term 8-week thing, knock on wood that it's not, it could be pretty difficult. You're going to have to rely on Devontae Adams. Yeah, potentially. Yeah, you're going to have to rely on Devontae Adams, who's new in the offense. Tutu Atwell, who's not really jumped to that next level like we all thought that he would when they drafted him a couple of years ago. So, like, it changes the entire scheme of what's going on. And that is the thing, though, right? The Rams may have these other options. They may have I think their run game is massively overlooked. Why? I don't know. They do have other options on this offense, which is why I think they can go toe-to-toe with just about anybody in the league. But it's like, yeah, but if you remove a Puka Nacua, it could absolutely change the identity of that offense. Whereas last year you had Kupp, you had Puka Nacua. If one went down, the other one was there, right? You're not going to have that this year unless Devontae is his old self. If he's the Devontae Adams from 5 or 6 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago, this could be really dangerous. This could be a really potent offense. But yeah, I would take the Rams, but I'm with you in that this is going to be a great game. Either way you want to look at it, it's going to be a great game, and hopefully they're both fully healthy and they could both like just leave it all out on the field and let's see, right?
Yes, and the thing too is, and then before we talk about the Seattle game, because this could be a turning point in the season, I want to say with Detroit and LA, you talk about the rivalry. On the surface, people may think it's just Detroit and LA. It's a city thing, you know. Detroit and LA. You got the blue collar Detroit, hardworking.
Yeah.
Put your nose in the ground, and the LA people are the snobby rich. Get me my caviar, please. Right. That kind of thing. But it's layers, and if you follow it, it's layers and deep. It's all about Stafford and Goff and McVay. You know, on some level, I'm sure Goff feels shunned, that he was just pushed off. Like, he may not say it publicly, but I think we all know, Ty, deep down, in his heart of hearts, he might have felt, hey, I still have my best football ahead, and you just pushed me off. Now I'm going to go prove it somewhere else. And I'm happy he's thriving in Detroit. Whenever someone gets traded like that, I hope both parties, you know, it works out for both individuals. Now, when A.J. Brown got traded from the Titans to Philly, I was like, please don't let this work. Please, 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 please. Don't let that work. But in all seriousness, though, division rivals. But speaking of division rivals, kind of segue is nice because I'm sure there's some Ram fans hoping by this point Cooper Kupp is not working in the Seahawks system. But I'm sure most of them will root for him. Week 16, Thursday night, December 18th, at the Seattle Seahawks, 8:15 on Prime Video. So get your Amazon out again, kids. So this time, LA going to Seattle off a tough game. I think that does make a big difference, in my opinion, because you are playing a very feisty, I think, Seahawks team. I do think the Seahawks might be a borderline playoff team. I think the West in general, Ty, I think they could have three playoff teams. I think that's how good the division might be. I don't think all four, because that's going to be really hard to do. Kind of like with college football, it's kind of hard to get, you know, a certain amount in a certain conference. I feel like with the West, they could get 3 at the most. And I feel like Seattle could be one if things go their way. But how do you see this game going, Ty? Because this is the second game you're going to see Cooper Kupp. Hopefully he's healthy. Knock on wood and pray. And this time it's in Seattle. It could be raining. It could be windy, because it does get windy over there. How do you see this game going after a tough game in Detroit on a short week?
Yeah, that's the key. Short week. You got a big game. Like we said, it might as well just be a rivalry game between the Rams and Detroit, LA and Detroit. That'll be a physical game, because it always is. Then you got to turn around on a short week and play Arizona. Again, you know a lot more about Arizona than I do, based on what you've said and what you've noted, this might be a tough one for LA to overcome. This might be a tough one. I guess because, I don't think I've picked against the Rams except maybe once, maybe twice. This could be one that the Rams slip up because it's a short week. Again, on paper, I think the Rams probably are the best team in the West, but it's probably not by a lot. Like, it feels like it could be 1A, 1B, and then maybe even 1C. The NFC West, you're right, from what I understand and what little knowledge I have on the 25 season, it could be pretty loaded. But I think all roads probably you're probably going to end up in Los Angeles if you want to win the division, or if you want to get a good position into the playoffs. You're probably going to have to go through the Rams. But I'll take Arizona. Short week, tough physical game against the Seahawks. It's never easy. Or excuse me, against Detroit the week before. I would say the Rams probably drop this one.
I would agree too. I've got the Rams losing 3 straight and falling to 8-7. I think short week going to Seattle. I think Cooper Kupp, I think if he's healthy, like I said, hopefully so. Never wish injuries on anybody. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. And I feel like he'll ball out at home. The home crowd's going to give him the extra juice. And I feel like there's always something in store when these two teams play. It's always funny. Like, I remember when Goff got hurt in the playoff game against Seattle, and John Wolford came in and led the Rams to victory. I mean, you remember that, don't you, Ty? Like, once Goff went down, everyone was like, "Oh, this is disaster. Seattle's gonna." Nope, McVay does it again.
Yeah, McVay. He can get it. He's a quarterback whisperer. I mean, he did the same thing with Baker. In fact, you might even make the argument that McVay or that Baker Mayfield might have learned a thing or two, because after his short time in LA, his 1 year, I remember all the guff people were giving me because they wouldn't hang on to him. Instead they go the Stafford route, or they, decided to, move forward with Stafford and not keep Baker. I remember there being a lot of rhetoric about, like, why did you do that? Why wouldn't you, Baker's the guy. And I was like, I don't know, man. I think he really just, McVay was the whisper. It feels like ever since then, Baker Mayfield has been like better. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like he's been better. And obviously I think it helps when he got some really good targets to throw to, like he does with Evans. But yeah, he is the quarterback whisperer, but we'll see. I'm having so many issues with my mic. It just keeps dropping on volume and it's killing me. But yeah, no, you're right. He is, it seems like you could put anybody at that quarterback spot. McVay's going to figure out a way to win.
And at this point, I have the Rams at 8-7. So these next 2 games could be for their season. Could very well be, depending on how the division plays. Because I think, in my personal opinion, this is going to be a big moment for Michael Penix Jr. Can he rise to the occasion? He's going to be at home against a Rams team who I think will be playing for a whole heck of a lot all of a sudden. After starting off great and then coming down the stretch, I've got him losing some games. I mean, Ty, is the moment going to be too big for Penix here, or do you see the Rams pulling it out in Atlanta, avoiding the dirty bird, so to speak?
Yeah, I think the Rams should be able to take care of business against Atlanta. I've never been that big on Penix. I just never have. Even when he was when he played at Washington, he actually transferred. He played he started at Indiana and he ended up in Washington, if I recall. Never really. He's always struck me as a system quarterback. I seem to remember that when I was watching when he entered the portal out of Indiana. I remember thinking that, like, well, maybe the Razorbacks should take a look at Michael Penix. And I seem to remember thinking, like, he seems like a system guy. And then he goes to Washington and he's incredible. I mean, he was great. I think he was like a top 10 pick, out of Washington, and kind of proved me wrong. So, but maybe I'm wrong, but I'm not that big on Atlanta. I've got some people in my Discord, in the Tusk Talk Discord, that are diehard Atlanta fans. I hate to tell you, but they suck. I'm sorry, Mac, Your Falcons are garbage. Penix is a system quarterback. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Am I going to clip this later and share it in our Discord? Probably. And I'm just going to tell you that the Falcons might be worse than the Saints next year, Mac. I don't know what to tell you, brother. I think they're
Oh gosh. Oh boy, you just upset the whole region of Atlanta, Ty, in one clip. Oh my gosh. Lord have mercy. Yeah.
Hey, but they'll have another
official,
top 10
the
pick
whole,
next year.
That's the good point. Maybe it'll all work out. But in all seriousness, though, I do think the Rams will win this game. Even though in Atlanta, you want to talk about diehards in a big city, they love their Falcons, Ty. That's one of the things I've learned. You know, we talked about the LA crowds, right? How a lot of, not all of them, but a lot of them are just celebrities and not diehards. Atlanta, for a big city town, they have a lot of Falcons fans. And I think they're true blood, been there since the beginning Falcons fan, which is cool to see in a big city like that. Like the Bears fans, like they're another fan base when you talk about true diehard in a big city that love their team. In Atlanta, there's a lot of things to do. Like I've always been told, Georgia is a beautiful place to visit. There's things to do. And the fact that they love their Falcons this much, I'm glad to see it. It's good for the sport.
You know,
but I do have winning this. Go ahead.
You said you have the Rams winning?
Yes, I do have the Rams winning.
I will give Penix some credit, though. You know, he came in, if I recall, he beat out Cousins at the end of the year. Cousins got hurt or something. And Penix had a couple of decent games, even when they lost. I think he had one game, one or two games, maybe two, that went into overtime, and you know, he put together a pretty good outing for a rookie quarterback. It wasn't bad. But you know, some of that is how much tape do you have on a backup quarterback, right? Like when a backup comes in and he's a rookie, how much tape? What does the Falcon offense, or any offense for that matter, look like when you're putting a rookie out there who you have no tape on, you have no history with? So it might have been some of that. I seem to remember that being some of the stuff that I was finding on Penix's ending of the year. Again, Cousins was the starter, and I don't think fans really were ever that comfortable. Even though the fact the guy threw for like 500 yards in an overtime game, I think against was the Bucks, I think. But like they still, like the Atlanta's offense was messy, and for Penix to go in there and have a couple of overtime games shows a little bit. I don't know if that probably had more to do with the defense, but I do seem to remember watching his highlights against Carolina, and he looked pretty solid. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Penix is the real deal, but not. I still think he was. I still look at him and think of a system quarterback. But yeah.
Well, I remember the Discord around. Not to go down a rabbit hole here, but I bring this up because Stafford, for the longest time, I remember that was what was a lot of people's biggest gripe with him. They were like, is Stafford really this good, or is it just, what is it with him? Like, some people were in the boat of, oh, Stafford's what drives this Detroit engine. He is the quarterback. And then there was others that kind of made the claim of, oh, it's Calvin Johnson. Of course Stafford looks great. Of course Stafford does this. And I was always in the boat tie of, I think Stafford is legit as it comes. Even before he got the Super Bowl, I said, I think he's one of the 10 best quarterbacks playing today. Dude constantly gets beat up, banged up, but continues to walk it off and shrugs it off like a tough SOB and doesn't give a dang. Tougher than a $2 steak. And he just continues to play. He still does it now. Like, you'll see him like with a bandage on his hand, and he's like, I'm fine, let's go. Like, dude's tough. And I think you put him with any team, I think that they're a winning team automatically. Do I think too highly of Stafford? I don't know. What do you think, Ty?
I mean, yeah, I think he's a top 10, top 8 quarterback. I mean, when the problem is a lot of these other quarterbacks, not all of them, but a lot of them do have more solidified help up front on the offensive line, and that's been an issue with the Rams for a little bit. Like, it's not been terrible. Like, Havenstein over at that right tackle spot seems like he's been there for 15 years. He's the most average right tackle in the league, and yet the Rams struggle to move on from Havenstein up front. They've made some moves, and maybe it'll be better, and it sure does help when you've got help up front on the line of scrimmage. I'll say when the Rams have a healthy offensive line, and all the pieces around him are healthy too, he is a top 8. I think he might even be a top, at his best, top 6, top 8 quarterback in the NFL. Again, all those things have to come together, though.
Yes.
And I'm not saying those guys in front of him don't have some of the same issues. But I think he is at the top of his game when he peak Stafford. Well, we saw it when they went on, and he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. I mean, there's no doubt. And that offense ran smoother with him at quarterback than it ever did with Goff. Not that Goff and McVay were together that long, but so I think that speaks volumes. And if I remember that year right, you talked about OBJ. OBJ got hurt in the Super Bowl. He got hurt in that game, and it was like, it definitely had an impact on that offense, but luckily you still had Cooper Kupp and you had some other pieces there. So, I mean, you could say the same thing, like, who was Baker Mayfield without the targets he's had, without Evans, and you go down that laundry list of these quarterbacks. Sometimes it's a great quarterback makes average, like I said earlier, makes average receivers better, and vice versa, right? And a lot of the times at the end of the day, it really comes down to who's calling the plays, who's offense, who's design, and McVay has been the big piece to that, right? So it's tough to say, but Stafford he was a well-accomplished quarterback before he came to LA, and then McVay took him over the top. And so durable, I agree. He's tough, durable, he plays through injuries all the time. But again, if they keep him healthy this year, if they get some help at the wide receiver spot next to Puka Nacua, they're going to be deadly. It's going to be a very difficult offense to deal with. My concern is, some of the pieces on that offense are older. I don't know that they've done enough with the offensive line to really move them forward or not, but I think they have. I think they're better in certain areas. It's that defense. It's kind of like what you said earlier. It's that defense. I feel like it's going to help push this team forward. But Rams are deep. I mean, they've got pieces on both sides of the ball, which is what I was trying to get at earlier. They're deep on both sides of the ball. It's not just offense. It's definitely on that defense as well when you talk about that front 6, front 7. So a lot of moving parts for these NFL rosters, for these NFL teams and their coaching staffs. But I'm probably I see what you're saying about the end of that schedule, about how they're probably going to lose some games there, which is very possible. But I'm on the other end of it. As long as they can remain healthy, and they get the Devontae Adams, I think they're going to get. If they get the Devontae Adams, I think they're going to get. This is going to be it's going to be a tough team. I don't know that any of these games are going to be like, no one's going to overlook the Rams. I'll say that.
I don't even think they overlooked the Rams before. I don't think last year. I don't think they overlooked them before. But this could be interesting, Ty. Week 18 TBD flex game, time to be determined in channels. So it could be the Saturday, it could be a late afternoon, it could be the Sunday night game for the division. First is Arizona. So there's multiple rabbit holes we could go down. This could be for the division. It could be for a playoff spot if things go south for one or the other. It could be for seeding. Both teams could have a spot, and it's just who gets a home field game and who doesn't. But this time in LA, do we have a season split? This time,
I think so.
Or season split on mine.
Yeah, I think so.
I do too.
It, like you said, it kind of depends. Those road games are not easy for the Rams. Having to even Carolina, like even going to Carolina is not going to be easy, right? Going to Arizona, then coming home, playing a really physical, Detroit football team, then having to go back on the road and go to Seattle and go to Atlanta, only to come back and, like you said, God knows when they're going to actually play the game, because it's a TBD flex. But I'm going to take the Rams, even though there's a lot of when you get to this point in the year, who knows, right? Health, is going to play a big factor at this point in the season. And then on top of that, like, what's their positioning? Is Arizona out of it at this point? And maybe now it's like they're not going to give you their best because now they might actually be playing for a draft spot. Like maybe they don't really want to win this game if things are bad enough, or is it the other way around? Is Arizona fighting to get into the playoffs, which could be the case. So those things matter. This is a coin flip game for me. I would take the Rams because it's at home. These two typically split. If memory serves, these two almost always split. Like it feels that way. It's rarely does it feel like it's ever a sweep. And I might be getting some years mixed up.
Even when Arizona was bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would take the Rams.
I would too. I would agree with you. Not to cut you off, I would agree too. I have them at 10-7 as my final record, which should be good enough to make the playoffs out in the NFC, depending on what the Cowboys do, what the NFC South looks like. They could sneak a second team in. It all depends. I have the Rams at 10-7 as my final record. As your final record, Mr. Ty Hudson, what do you have the Rams finishing as?
Well, again, I forgot who I picked on all these games, but I do think they're in the realm of probably 12 games between, I don't know. I feel like 10 would be the floor. I don't typically, I've gotten away from doing predictions, even with the Razorbacks, because there's always these unforeseen things that seem to happen, whether that be injuries.
Yes.
Well, my dogs are going absolutely crazy. But it's tough now. Of course, now they have that 17th game that they added, so now you're going deeper into December, and I don't know. I feel like 12 games is about right. It should be good enough to get into. Yeah, I think 12. You're basically almost all but a lock to get into the playoffs, because that would put you 12-5. But of course, it depends on what the other teams do in the other divisions. But yeah, I think they're at 12. I think 10 would be really rough. I think that would be under the circumstances where maybe I'm sorry, my dogs are so loud. But 10 wins would be somewhere around like, oh, the Rams ran into some injury issues. And I know last year they won 10. Well, guess what? They had injury issues. Like they couldn't keep offensive line, couldn't stay healthy. Receivers, Puka Nacua and Cooper, it seemed like they were kind of, you didn't really know if like how long these two were going to be out, any given week. A lot of durability issues on the offense. Defense suffered some as well. And again, everybody's got to fight through these, but it just matters so much more, especially in the NFC West. Where you're, it could really be three, like you said, there could be three teams out of that division into the playoffs. I'm with you on that. I think the NFC West is going to be pretty tough. So yeah, this could come down to injuries and health, as it always does, even though people don't want to admit it. But if they're healthy, they're in a good place. If they can finish out that rough end of the schedule, and that is rough, if they can finish out winning maybe 3 of their final 6, I think they'll be in good shape to get a good spot in the playoffs. But I've got them somewhere around 12 to maybe 13 wins. Which would be fantastic. But again, a lot of things got to go their way for that to be the case, right? Like if you look at some of these other teams, it's not the case. Like they don't have to have like, oh, well, this guy's got to be healthier. It's over with, right? Like the Rams are kind of, there's just certain spots. Like again, unless Puka Nacua could be all that's promised once again, and Devontae Adams also, because I think, and I'm basing this on the fact that Tutu Atwell's back, who has shown flashes of being a really high caliber player. Flashes, we've not seen it consistently. And Devontae Adams, who I think will be that guy. I think he's going to be a stud in this offense. So I'm saying these things why I think they can go toe to toe with anybody, because I believe that these guys are going to be big parts of that offense, including the rookie tight end, and if not him, maybe Tyler Higbee. So, and then on top of that, everything that's going on the defense as well.
And what I'll say to this too is we're all assuming here that the Rams are going to be healthier at least 85% healthy by the time we get to these stretch runs. But you never know. Look at, for example, Carson Wentz. Injured late in the year. Eagles still went on to win the Super Bowl. Luckiest thing I've ever seen in my life, but I digress on that. But in one injury like that could turn your whole season. Look at Dak and his turned ankle against the Giants. I mean, you just never know. I don't wish it on anybody, but like you said, we could be seeing injuries. Matthew Stafford, who's been pretty durable, this could be the year. Knock on wood, not praying for none of this. He could get a serious injury and puts him out 9 to 10 weeks. Or Nakua or someone on the defense. Not praying for any of that. Would never want any of that on a human being and their families. But this is a physical sport, and it could flip a game all of a sudden. All of a sudden, like you say, the Carolina game, if Stafford's not there or he's not completely healthy, it could flip it on its head, and the Panthers could upset the Rams.
Absolutely.
Thus plummet their playoff chances. But for me, I would say my ceiling for the Rams is 12 wins. I think I'm at 10-7. I think 12 wins. I think you could flip the Detroit game. I think they could win that game. I think they could sweep the Niners. Like you said, Ty, I could see a world where that happens. And I could see 12 wins. I wouldn't say 13 because I feel like the Rams are going to be up there in the upper echelon. But I don't know if you were to put them in a tier, if they're in the Philly tier. Because I feel like it's Philly, Detroit, and maybe Washington in like a tier. And then like the Rams are like the tier 2 with maybe the Cowboys and the Niners maybe. Am I far off in saying that they're a tier 2 team in the NFC?
Well, I don't know. I think they're better than Dallas. And I think they can be better than Washington. I see what Washington's doing, and they're really solid. But there's something about having McVay again with Stafford, a Super Bowl winning quarterback. Again, like I said, there's a lot of things that have to happen, right? Tiers for me in the NFL are tough because, I mean, like we're all going to say Kansas City. Like if you had to ask the common person on the street who's going to go to the Super Bowl, well, they're going to pick Kansas City and then probably Philadelphia or whoever, right? I don't know. That's a tough one. I think Washington and the Rams. If Washington's ahead of the Rams, it's not by much, in my opinion. Although Washington was really good, and you look at last year. If some things had gone the Rams' way, we're talking about probably a 13-win team last year. Had they avoided some of the injuries,
yes,
they're probably 13 wins. And I think somehow they may actually be better than what they were a year ago. But again, I'm saying this because I believe Devontae Adams is going to be a really good piece of this offense,
is all.
Right?
And what I want to add to that is we're prefacing this in late June. By early August, we could change our mind, and the Rams could have something catastrophic happen, and it could change our opinions completely. We're saying this in late June as we speak, where we would put them.
And it's always hypothetical, right? I mean, it's something that who knows, right? And especially for someone who hasn't done, I have not done all my homework for the NFL this year. I rarely do. I only usually look at like who the Rams play week by week, and then I kind of go based off that. But I usually don't even start my NFL homework until July. But I know what they accomplished last year, and I kind of know, what they did with this roster this year. I do feel like even without Cooper Kupp, I do feel like if Devontae is who I think he can be in this offense, they're going to be as good or better. And that was a team a year ago who had a really rough – I mean, they always are rough, right? There is no easy NFL schedule, but they had a pretty tough schedule last year, I thought, and they still could have won 12, 13 games. So again, call me biased. I'll say this. I thought going into last year they wouldn't win 10 games. I thought they'd win eight or 9 games. I really thought we were on our way out with Stafford. I thought this was it. And maybe we just had a couple of really good years with Cooper Kupp, and maybe Puka is him, but maybe they just don't have it on defense. They rolled the dice with some pieces on defense, and it ended up working out. So I didn't think they'd win 8 last year. In fact, I think I even put in a prediction somewhere they'd only win 8, and they'd prove me wrong. And I did not think they'd make the playoffs. And when you know it, when they play the Eagles, I thought that game they were as good as the Eagles, who went on to win the whole damn thing. So knowing that, that's kind of where my head's at. If that team that played against Philly, that went on that good, a short little run there in the playoffs, but ended the year on a pretty positive note, that's the team I feel like is carrying over into this year. Am I confident with my 12 picks? Not super high because, like I said, I haven't done all my homework with the rest of the schedule and with the rest of the league. But I do feel good about this team, though. And at the very least, I think it's a playoff caliber team.
And I want to ask you a couple more questions and then let the people know where they can find you. And I do this with all my guests, or at least I try to. But for the Rams, is the Super Bowl window still open, in your opinion? I asked the teams that they think they have. Like, obviously, I'm not going to ask a Carolina person if their Super Bowl window's open. They're not nowhere near that. But as a Rams fanatic and fan, is their window still open? And how many years do you think they have left?
Well, even I try to when I look at anybody, and the same thing can be said of like Arkansas, right? I'm born and raised in Fayetteville. And I'm not going to tell you that I think they're a playoff caliber team this year, right? Like I'm going to look at it as objectively as I can, knowing again with how things ended last year, and where I think they're headed. I absolutely think the Super Bowl window is there. Anything could happen when you're talking about the month of like December, which could be a huge month for these teams. Again, especially since they added a 17th game, they could absolutely get hot, go on a run, and all of a sudden they're just, they're gliding through games. That could absolutely happen. That's kind of what happened when they won the Super Bowl. They just got, I don't even know if that was the best roster in the NFL. I don't think it was, and they still won the Super Bowl. Like, in all honesty, I seem to remember that year everyone talking about the Rams might be lucky to make the playoffs, or maybe folks had them in but not really doing anything, and they went on and won the whole thing because mostly they got hot at the right time, which is weird. When you talk about that, you're typically talking about like baseball. You're talking about like, pro ball or college baseball, where it's like, oh, well, yeah, they got hot in, after the All-Star break, when you're talking about like the Major League Baseball. It can happen in the NFL now that you're playing 17 freaking games. You can all of a sudden get hot. Things are just clicking and you're all on the same page. It can happen in any team sport. And that's what happened when the Rams won the Super Bowl. So I don't think I would put, given where the roster's at, given the experience of this coaching staff, with the front office, with the GM all the way down to the janitor, like this organization knows how to get into the Super Bowl. They know how to get there. They've made multiple Super Bowl trips, which is why it's odd when you talk about like the better teams in the NFL the last 5 or 6 years and people leave the Rams out. I'm like, what are you talking about? They've made 2 Super Bowl runs. They've gone on some pretty good runs in the playoffs. Of course they're one of those teams you should think about as a Super Bowl contender, or a legitimate one over the last several years. Had Goff not been like deer in the headlights against the Patriots, they could have won that Super Bowl because that defense was really good, and the offense was good enough to win the whole thing. And that's why I also think Stafford is still a step ahead of Goff because of the performance Goff gave against the Patriots in that Super Bowl. That was definitely eye-opening, right? And Stafford, it was like it worked because Stafford is that much better of a quarterback, even though Goff has been fantastic for Detroit. But no, I certainly think that the Rams, I don't think the window's closed. When it closes, I don't know. I don't know if that'll be when McVay does, if he actually does retire. If I have all the confidence in the world of Stafford, if this is it for him, if this year is the last year for him, as we feel like it's been the last 3 years, as long as McVay's there, I think they're going to plug someone else in, and guess what? Probably turn him into a capable quarterback, and then God knows from that point on. So I don't know. I don't know how long that window is going to be open. I really don't. It could close if McVay retires. Then I don't know, right? That it's going to be about who takes his spot, and maybe he's from the McVay coaching tree, maybe it's an outside hire, but I don't know. I think the window probably closes when either Snead moves on as a general manager or when McVay retires. That will probably be when the window closes.
Because for me, when I think of a Super Bowl window, this is kind of my interpretation of it. Like if you, Ty, were to tell me, oh, the Rams are going to be in the Super Bowl this year, I would be like, oh, that's not surprising. Like they have everything there to do it. That's what I think. But if you were to tell me like a team like the Broncos are going to go to the Super Bowl, I'd be like, oh, like I respect your opinion, but I think you've been hit up the head one too many times, that kind of thing. But if you tell me the Rams are going to go to the Super Bowl, I wouldn't blink an eye. I think they've got a good enough roster to do it, and a quarterback who's proven, and a coach who very well one day may be a first ballot Hall of Fame coach in McVay. I wouldn't bat an eye at it. And I think too, also what I want to ask you, and then we'll skedaddle out of here, is when we talk about, the MVP, it's very subjective, it's a quarterback driven award, but let's talk about the team MVPs. In your opinion, Ty, who would be your offensive MVP for the Rams? Is there one guy you think it's this guy, he's going to be our MVP? He's the most valuable player on this offense. And same goes for the defense.
Well, on offense, I think it'd have to be Stafford, right? I mean, because the offense could still work without Puka Nacua, just not near as effectively. Without Stafford, it doesn't work. And if we're talking about like having a great year, or a year where you're good enough to go to the playoffs, it's probably going to be because of Stafford. I would say. I would say to not overlook someone like a Kyron Williams, Devontae Adams. I'm telling you, I think they're getting something out of him this year. I'm not saying he's gonna be huge. I'm not saying the guy's gonna put up 75 plus catches, 900,000 yards or something like that, but he could be a huge part of this offense. So maybe he does do something like that. I don't know, but it really could come down to what they do in the run game with Kyron Williams, who I think it feels like at any moment this cat's going to just blow up on the year, and all of a sudden he's all anyone's talking about. Feels like he's knocking on that door. But yeah, I feel like on offense it would probably have to come down to Matthew Stafford, because without him at all, none of this works. And that's, you could say that about any NFL team. I get it, but I should say most NFL teams. But yeah, I would say on offense it would probably have to be Stafford.
And for me, I would agree. I would say Stafford or Nacua. But like you said, I'm going to give the big fellas some love. That O-line, they really came into their own down the stretch last year.
Better.
I think they really, they were a young group. I know. And I think they could be the MVP. Give the big fellas some love. I think if they have a consistent starting of the year and ending of the year, I think they very well could be the success for the Rams going far. Less hits on Stafford, better running game to start with. I would give the big fellas some love, but as general, I would agree with Stafford. But as far as for defensive MVP, there's a lot of guys you can nominate for that one, in my opinion. But what say you, Ty?
I don't know. That's a tough one. Yeah, you could probably.
There's a lot of guys.
You could probably, and this is why I think they end up with 12 or 13 wins, is because of the balance on offense, because of how good the offense is going to be, but because of how clutch that defense can be, and just how overall the amount of beast they have on defense. Jared Verse, who, I think he ended up with I think he had 8 or 9 sacks last year, was such a huge part of that defense, even though he doesn't tear up the stat sheet in a way that you would kind of expect. But he was a monster. Every time I got to watch him play, it was like that was the guy. Even if he wasn't making the play, he was forcing the play. He was, and I don't think he had a ton of hurries this year. I could be no, I think he did, actually. Off the top of my head, I think he actually did have a ton of hurries. I saw that somewhere on a sheet, and it was actually pretty high. It seemed like every time I watched the guy, he was He was disrupting the timing. He just has such an effect on the offense. Now, I don't think he's the next like Aaron Donald. I don't think this is a for sure Hall of Famer just yet. Like, I got to see more year 2, right?
It's hard to replicate Aaron Donald.
That's a one.
Like you get compared to Aaron Donald, like that's special. But to say that you're the next Aaron Donald, you better back it up on the field.
Yeah. And I don't know that Verse is that, but Verse has shown the potential to be one of the top defensive players in the league, no matter the position. He has shown that potential. And I watched him, and I can remember watching Aaron Donald. That's all I wanted to watch his rookie year. I wanted to watch Aaron Donald, this kid out of Pitt. I wanted to see what and I saw it then. I didn't say he was a Hall of Famer, but I said, damn, that dude is good. He's gonna be a problem. And I have that same feeling about Verse. And they've had plenty of draft picks over the year in the top 3 rounds. They draft some defensive guy. If you want to talk like back in the St. Louis era where I was like, I don't know, maybe he'll be all right. And that player ended up being better than I thought, right? Maybe this is Verse, right? Maybe Verse is going to be even better. And I'm already big on him. But I would say it probably for me would come down to Verse. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It really could come down to Verse, Byron Young, Omar Spates is another one who's got a lot of potential. They also drafted, by the way, Christopher Paul, who played at Arkansas and transferred to Ole Miss. And there's some Ram fans that I talk with, and they're all about him. They think Chris Paul's going to end up being a starter before the end of the year. And I said, there's no way he's going to beat out Spates. I don't think that's going to happen. But they've just got so many pieces on that front 6, front 7 that's like, man, they're going to contend with just about anybody. Like, I don't see anyone dominating that space against the Rams. Like, maybe Philly. Philly matches up well there, and there's a couple other teams that can match up with them pretty well there. But overall, I think 80% of their schedule, not very many teams are going to match up well against that front 7. And like you said, there's so many names. You can almost pick a name out of the hat, and it feels like that would be the team defensive MVP. But I guess I might go, and we can't forget about Fisk either. Fisk was really good too. He was great. But I guess I would probably take Verse. I'll go with Verse because I think he's going to have a monster year this year.
And I do think too, being in ACC country, I watched a lot of Jarrett Verse at Florida State. Dude's explosive. He's a game wrecker. And this past year, when he slipped as far as he did, as I potentially said, I was like, Verse could be a borderline first-round draft pick. I thought he had potential. And he slipped to the Rams. I'm like, the Rams just got a steal, and not many people know it yet.
I couldn't believe he slipped.
And I even told my I even told my friend, I was like, I can't believe they just let this fall in Sean McVay's lap. Like, are you kidding me? This is a steal. He's going to be a superstar in this league.
Should have been.
I couldn't believe he slipped that far.
Should have been a top 8, top 6 pick. I mean, to me, there's no doubt. And when he was there at 19, that's all I kept screaming because I was watching the draft live, and I said, take Verse, get Verse, get this kid. I'm telling you. And he played at Albany, and he actually transferred at Florida State. And when he was in the transfer portal, because that's kind of become my thing. I love the transfer portal. Part of me is kind of sad they may shrink it down to just 10 days, but I love the portal. And I was watching his Albany highlights. I was all over this kid. I loved him. And when he ended up at Florida State, I thought he would do really good. If you would have told me he was a top 20 pick, I wouldn't have been shocked. But then by the time the draft comes around and he slides all the way to 19th, I was like, how is he still there? And he was huge for them last year. And again, I think he's going to be, I'm telling you, man, this could be a future on the front box of a Wheaties cereal box. That's the caliber of player I think he could become, and he could have that kind of year. And you got to love this dude's size and physicality and his athleticism. I mean, you're talking about someone who's 6'4", around 6'5", 265 pounds, and he moves as well. And like you mentioned, he's got that kind of explosion. Yeah, if he's healthy, watch out. I'm telling you, man, I think he's going to be an all-pro guy. Yes. If not this year, maybe the year after, but he's getting there.
Yes, and he's only going to get better too. That's the scary part about this
Yeah.
is people think we're talking about him as he's already at the level that he's already met the ceiling. No, he's just
Yeah.
cracking the ceiling of what he could
Yeah.
be in
I
LA.
agree.
And
I agree.
funny thing about it too is, and what, and I want to say this too, Ty, before I want to give one last mention, but Taylor Rapp in the secondary, I think you can make a case for him to be MVP because he's going to have
Oh.
a lot of the weight on his shoulders. A lot of weight on his shoulders to make sure that young secondary does their job. I want to give him a little love and a little shout out. I don't know if he would win it if the as per the team goes, because like you said, we mentioned a lot of great players. It's a competition on the defense side of the ball, but Taylor Rapp for me is one I think a lot of Rams fans should consider if there was an award as team MVP. What do you think about that, Ty?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe. But they need a lot of help in the secondary. We know that. Like that was the thing. That was their Achilles last year. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
and but I'll say this one final thing though about Jared Verse. We got to remember this was NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. I don't know. We forgot that he was a Pro Bowler. He was, and yet I still think,
Yes.
and I meant to slide that in there earlier. I still think he's going to be at a heightened level. I think he's going to be better. I need to look up his total pressures because I know it was up there among all rookies. It was like one of the highest. And I still think he could be better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's crazy about all this. And there were some really good rookies last year on defense, and he stood out as the
Yes.
best. And I think he's only going to get better, man. And now that the game might be slowing down for him a little bit going into year 2, I mean, who knows? But I'll say this: I think he will, God willing, staying healthy,
Mm-hmm.
could end up as one of the top 5, like one of the finalists for Defensive Player of the Year. Now, again, a lot of things got to come together, and you cut out there. What?
I think he's that type of player.
Yeah.
I said I would agree with you. I think he would definitely be in that defense conversation, God willing, if he stays healthy.
Well,
and like you said, like the thing about it too is, and it is what I want to say is I really think if the Rams do win it all, I think he'll be a big part of that.
oh
I
yeah,
know it's crazy to say, but he'll be the engine
yeah,
that drives that defense if they win it all.
yeah,
And I think it's that special. But
and that's the thing though, right? Like
go
when
ahead, Ty.
I talked about the offense, like if you lose a Stafford, now this is going to be the case for any quarterback. My God, could you imagine KC without Patrick Mahomes?
Yes.
Like, of course, you lose your quarterback.
Oh
You're up the
Lord.
creek. You're up the creek without a paddle. It's true, fair enough. If you lose a Puka Nacua, it could have a pretty big impact. Again, I think Devontae is going to be him. I think Tutu Atwell is going to have a growing role in the offense. It may not be as devastating, but it's going to have an impact without a doubt because he's potentially one of the top 3 receivers in the NFL. But on the defense for the Rams, it's like, you know what? They could actually lose Verse for 2 or 3 weeks, and it's not like a massive drop because there's so much talent and they're so good and there's so much potential in that front 7 that it's like, yeah, it'll hurt. It'll have an impact. It certainly will, but it's not as devastating. And again, I want people to be clear, whoever's watching this, if you're a Ram fan, that's why I like this team to get into that when I say they go toe to toe with anybody, that's why. When I talk about all the pieces, it's that front 7 that Snead helped put together for this roster, and that group up front that matches what they're doing on defense. They're going to be great. Now, is it possible that they don't have as many injuries and they still fall flat on their face? Of course, it's the NFL. I mean, it wouldn't be the NFL without someone underperforming or without a group underperforming. Right. And I hate to say this, I know you're a Cowboy fan, but I would say the Cowboys are kind of the poster child of that, right? All this talent, all these pieces they have, and yet they have a hard time sniffing the playoffs. It's the NFL. It happens all the time. But I'm pretty high on the Rams this year. I really am. Like I said, 12 to 13 wins is where I'm at. Their ceiling might be 14 for me. And again, their lowest, their basement level, I would probably say between 9 and 10 wins.
I would agree with that. And what I want to say that too, as far as the 2025 LA Rams go, I think I think the Rams are in that conversation. When you talk about Super Bowl favorites, contenders, I think you have the conversation. I think starts with Philly,
Yeah.
Detroit,
Mm-hmm.
and then you kind of have the other conversations. But then I think it's the Rams. Like I think it's Philly, Detroit, Washington, and maybe the Rams.
Mm-hmm.
Out in the NFC, if you talk Super Bowl favorites, who could win the conference? And I think the Rams, this could be the year they finally break through again. I love Matthew Stafford, one of my favorite quarterbacks I've ever watched in my life. And I hope he wins another Super Bowl just to validate, you know, like one Super Bowl validates you, but if you win two, you're up there with iconic legends. Look at Eli
Mm-hmm.
Manning. Like, not that he wasn't a great quarterback, but the fact that he's got two and he stopped Brady from winning double digits, people revere him now in New York and around the world, so to speak. So this could be a special year for LA. And Ty, I thank you for joining me for this.
Yeah.
But before we head out, though, we need to let the people know about you, my good friend. I mean, because although I do talk a lot of NFL, I do love me some college football too. I would say I love the NFL just a little bit more, just a little bit, but I do love me some college as well. But if there's any Arkansas fans that are going to watch this and watch it for Ty, Mr. Ty Hudson is the Arkansas expert. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to Arkansas. But Mr. Ty will tell you more about that. Take it away.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, you can find me on just one spot, even though everyone I talk to, other content creators, tell me I'm stupid for doing it. You can find me in one spot, which is Tusk Talk with Ty on YouTube. That's really it. Like, I'm on Twitter. You can find me at Ty Hudson or at Tusk Talk with Ty on X rather. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Been there for a while. We're slowly creeping up on 2 million total views.
Mm-hmm.
We're climbing our way up, and I'm not a daily guy. I don't go live every day. I don't have a team of writers. I don't have the capacity to do that, but I try to go live at least once or twice every week and then drop some cut up YouTube shorts. Right now we're just kind of keeping up with recruiting. I would say my area of expertise, I still keep up with recruiting quite a bit, but it would be the transfer portal is where I've really kind of invested a lot of my time and energy and the things I look up the most, when you're coming out of or as you're getting through the season, going into the off season in college football. So if you're a fan of just checking out the transfer portal, I try to do my best there for Razorback fans anyways, to try and keep everyone up to date. We do a lot in our Discord, Tusk Talk with Ty. If you're a Patreon supporter, you have full access to like the transfer portal sheet that I map out for fans. So that way they have a pretty good idea of what's going on there in the portal. But yeah, we're it's that time of year where it's the talking season. We're slowly creeping into July. I'm looking forward to fall camp. And yeah, of course the content will really ratchet up once we get into August, once we get into fall camp and navigate our way through all that. But yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man.
It's always a pleasure, Ty. And for anyone that wants to follow Ty on Twitter/X or follow him on his Patreon or YouTube, I'll put those links down below in the description and comments if you'd like to do that. Even if you're not an Arkansas fan, I'm sure Ty will welcome you in with open arms. Now, I don't know if you're a Missouri fan if he'll welcome you in, but now I know some people think Missouri's a rival and some don't. That could be a whole nother show, but in all seriousness, though, it doesn't matter what kind of fan you are. Ty Hudson is a wonderful community. I'm a Louisville fan. I enjoy watching Arkansas Razorback content. Bob Petrino used to be a Razorback, believe it or not, who was at Louisville. So there's that connection with one another. Although he didn't get in too much trouble on our watch. But in all seriousness, But thank you as always. Thank you for your time. And for all my people out there, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell. Never miss another great video. And we will see you in the next prediction. So with that being said, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Go follow Mr. Ty. Do great stuff over there. And we're getting closer to the NFL and college football season. Go Cards, everybody, and see you all in the next one.